Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today my guest is Raye Perez. Raye is a close friend of mine. Raye is a pillar, well known within the 75th Ranger Regiment. He's somebody that is unfortunately transitioning out too soon. In a lot of people's opinion, the regiment and the Army is not going to know how much they miss Raye until Raye's gone. But I'm proud to have him on the show today. I couldn't do Raye's bio justice, so I'll hand it over to him so he can introduce himself, and we'll get on with the conversation.
Thanks, Yuma. Yeah, so as Yuma said, my name is Raye Perez. It's a very generous introduction, but I'm a family man, so I have a little girl. She's 4 years old, and I'm married. I've spent 15 years in the regiment, and I feel like I've gone through multiple transitions at this point. Probably the largest one was in 2016, coming off of the operational side of the 75th and into selection and training. And in that transition, I've kind of grown to value, not kind of, I have come to grow to value growth much more than judgment and assessment. And I do believe that has its place, but I think that's a way to introduce myself. Yeah.
Now, you're a Texas boy, right? So
Yeah.
You can't get away off that easy on your bio. Let's talk a little bit about growing up in Texas. And I think you're from country kid. You grew up working hard. That obviously transitioned straight into the service when you do it. What was your time in Texas like? What did you learn in Texas? What set you up in Texas? What most Texans would say was the greatest state in the union. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into that debate with you. But
Yeah.
what did your upbringing? How did you translate that into service?
Work ethic.
Yeah.
I never realized, and it's just like a lot of things, you don't realize how valuable they are until you're gone, or they're gone. But what I learned, particularly from both the men and women in my family, was that, work is what matters. Like when you put yourself out there, you do it and you do it well. It's not about being successful the first time, but you will eventually be successful if you don't quit. And so I grew up. I mean, you're absolutely right. So I grew up working on ranches. I worked at a place called La Paloma that's out down in south of a place called Rivera, Texas. I worked with a lot of guys. Most of them, I'm sure they were all fairly legal. It was interesting because it was a lot of the work. We would go away. We would work for hours, 9-10 hour days out in the fields, walking in plowed fields, picking out logs and stumps that had been trolled up, and then clearing fences, working cattle, like all that stuff. And I knew nothing about most of that before I got there. But my family, my dad in particular, wanted me to go out there and do actual physical labor. I'd been doing it my whole life, but he wanted me to realize that if you want something, you have to work for it. That's where I grew up. I grew up working in the fields. I worked cotton every year since I was, I think, 16 years old, something like that. So I worked cotton every year. I've picked watermelons, onion, like all that stuff, and it was funny because I think, like I said, work ethic, it combats the other side of that, which is complaining. And so yeah. I think that's the biggest side that I brought into the military, though all of us complain at some point. At some point you realize you have to shut your mouth and do it. So and it was a really valuable time. I learned a lot of lessons from those ranches. It was probably, I was just thinking about this the other day, but I still at times very deliberately have and I don't know if anybody really knows this, but I eat ramen noodles still. So but what a lot of people don't know is that was like the only thing we ate when we were working cotton out in those houses, because we didn't have, most of the time we didn't have refrigerators.
Oh yeah.
And so we make ramen, and I there's very few things that bring me back like ramen and like a cheap beer that are, you know what I mean? Like it's, and so I'm a big fan of that. I appreciate it. My grandpa worked in the fields, and he never complained about it, and yeah, that's what I brought in.
I agree because I come from a similar background. The Army has been way easier than my ranching type career. And like I always say, cows don't know what a 4-day weekend is or Memorial Day. They're 24/7, 365. So I agree. I tied everything my military career to where I came from in New Mexico. And I think a lot of guys from that area that grew up in that environment, the Army was easy for them. And as long as they keep that work ethic and don't lose it, you can be successful at anything. You just got to be willing to do the work, right? And do the work that nobody else is willing to do. And in that, the work that nobody else is willing to do, you did something extremely, you're a trailblazer in the organization as far as NCOs are, in reference to going to Emory University and going and getting your executive MBA while working and running the most important program, probably, one of the most important programs within the 75th as an organization. Let's talk about that MBA journey and what that was like. And I'll let you start, and I'll chime in where I can, but it's a fascinating story and has opened doors and eyes for a lot of people within the organization over the past few years.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I would have to first, I think probably the biggest thing about the MBA is it was scary. I have a bias for action a lot of times, and I know you've worked around me before. That bias for action can work as much as my devil is my angel. Like I get myself into things that and so probably the best way to explain I had implemented the growth mindset at small unit tactics, at small unit Ranger tactics at the regiment. A lot of people didn't know that really, like, I was working through a lot of things at that point, being away from the line and being away from my guys. And I mean, and it's the time you step away and then they're going over again. It's not easy, and so, or if it's easy for some, I don't know how. Like so right. But I don't think it is. And a lot of Carol Dweck's work I had come to try and embrace, and I was getting better, and I was creating repetition in it. And then, the realities, for some reason I thought I could apply, the growth mindset in terms of my injuries. And I could just kind of say, they're never going to be limiting in doing a kit run and doing a ruck, a lot of carrying weight on the injuries that I had sustained over, a couple of very big point injuries, and it was funny because I couldn't get away from that, but what I could do was I realized that wasn't, the physical side. I grew up, like you said, Texas. I grew up playing football in Texas. I mean, and football in Texas is, I mean, it's a religion, and so I grew up in these fields, like these, I guess a lot of people would consider to be rough places.
Yeah.
And the long story, like it just taught me that I can work through a lot of things. And to go back, I mean, looking at Emory now and seeing that, like I was, after the success at CERT, after we increased the graduation rate the way we did, and I mean, it was historic and it was recognized, and it was hard to stay humble about it, because sometimes I think we're, like, what is it? I've heard you say this before, but it's okay to be a quiet professional, not a silent professional,
right,
and I'd love for somebody to articulate the difference between silent and quiet. You know what I mean? Because we stay silent a lot.
Yeah, we do.
And and so I guess all in all, in coming up to the MBA experience, I had come to embrace the growth mindset, but I knew that the MBA was going to stretch me way past anything that I had done before academically. Like or I had a strong guess on it because I had talked to a couple different students. And Emory had me do some preparation work on finance, accounting, and data analytics. And if that wasn't a wake up call, I don't know what was. So like I came in bearing confidence because I knew that I needed to not confidence, but I was confident in my ability to learn. That was hands down the only thing I brought into Emory. I knew that there was a way to teach. Yeah, that's work ethic, and I knew that there was a way I could learn it. I knew that there was a way the brain learned as an advantage. And I knew that I didn't know everything, so there was more for me to learn. And so it was only a matter of time. It wasn't a matter of if, it was when.
Yeah.
And and then getting to the experience, the cohort itself. I have a few different friends that I very close friends of mine now they consistently stay in touch with me. One of them I was just talking to fairly late last night, and I'll go up on Wednesday to Atlanta to do some work with him. But what was amazing was I found out there are good people in and out of the Army, and I wasn't convinced of that before. It also made me realize that human potential, it doesn't matter if you have been in a gunfight or not. We've all fought our battles, both the seen and unseen.
Yep.
And if you can help someone go deeper and be aware that they've been in a gunfight, they can then break down like what they did well and what they didn't, and they'll be better at the next one.
Right.
And so the experience itself it stretched me further than I ever could have imagined. What I appreciate about the experience is the people, the faculty at Emory. I assumed the school was going to be, the first time I went and saw the school, this thing, I mean, it's amazing. Guizetta is you go to the building and there's, marble everywhere, all these things that, man, like from the field
from the fields of Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I go from stripping, oak posts out in, stripping oak posts out on a ranch to like walking in, and there's these marble seats with these statements that inspire you just on the way to class. And you're like, I don't fit here. That this doesn't make sense. But everything about the people there, the staff, the faculty, like everything said the opposite. The only thing that was defining whether or not I fit there was me.
Right.
And so that's what Emory taught me above. Obviously they taught me how to look at business in a way that you actually add value, I think. And
so what I'm hearing, I don't want to cut you. But no, go ahead. It sounds like almost a little bit of imposter syndrome.
It is
going in there. How did the Emory, the cohort, General Keene, make Raye? Like, how quickly did it become? Oh, this isn't what I doesn't look like what it is. It is. Yeah. This is an inclusive. They want me to succeed. They want me here. When did you have that realization?
It was the end of semester 1. General Keene, Ken Keene, he never, like, I mean, he brought me the initial confidence to even attend.
Yeah.
Like, he was, it wasn't to him, it wasn't a matter of a question. And he saw something that I didn't, like he's a leader. He 100%. Was and so he, I mean, I honestly, I think he's the real secret behind, things there, and how the things that are truly transpiring and inspiring people to go and challenge themselves in that space. But I mean, it was the end of semester 1, and I met with a professor named Rob Kazanjian, and I had been pretty. I think the best way to say it is pretty timid in class,
right?
Because I sat in there with this group of people, and if you heard one of those classrooms, I mean, some of these, they understand business like right. Like we understand gunfights, yep. And they are amazing. they can understand a topic. And it's not that they're extremely talented. It's their work ethic. Every time, it's their work ethic. And so you have these people who were born in the United States or not, and they're all sitting in this classroom, and it was amazing. So it was intimidating to speak up at times for me. Not that they made it an intimidating environment, but Rob just very, very directly. I mean, so grateful for him because he didn't do. I don't know any way to say this other than to just say it. He didn't do the "Hey, you're a veteran, it's okay" thing. You know what I mean? He no, he gave me some very direct feedback on like how to be better. Shook my hand, and I mean he took me right back to being back in those fields in Texas where it was someone told you what was wrong. They didn't tell you, like there was no sugar coating or and it was just they shook your hand, like a man. And then you either did it or you didn't. There was no, and it was just straightforward. And so that was about then.
And I think it's, the fields of Texas, or the first time you walked into the company at 375, you either do or you do not. Especially those first couple of years in the organization, you either perform and you go get your tab and you move on, or you don't and you move out. And sometimes I think we just lose track of what got us to where we are. When we get older and more senior, we lose track of what that work ethic that got us there, that drive, that willing to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. And that's what you do it. I do it. We tell young Rangers all the time, you have it within you. You made it to this organization. You can go do whatever you want. Don't sell yourself short. And that kind of transitions to the whole vulnerability piece in this. And you can't come on the Leading with Vulnerability podcast without talking a little bit about vulnerability. And I just curious, what's your definition of vulnerability? What does it mean to you? Where have you used it in your life or seen it used? And what's your take on it?
Yeah, I gave this quite a bit of thought. Obviously before, because of I wanted to. Do this. I had some idea where I thought I'd walk in here and define vulnerability, and I realized that's never where my strength has been. It's I think that the most valuable experiences I've had with vulnerability are when I decided to bring down a wall that I very intentionally had up. And so in developing, and so like let's say in the small unit in CERT, in developing that program and transforming that, there were moments with the cadre where I had to be much more open to a lot of high friction from very, I had cadre from first, second, third bat, like there's a friction in the culture there. And then you have this competing body of students as well. And I think that where I saw the most value there was in being able to uphold the mission and putting down your personal walls to say, like, like I've never been happier than when I was not that important. Right. Like you're just a dude. We're just dude. And I had to remind myself of that. And in order to do that, you have to put yourself in a spot as a leader where you fully have the authority or ability to leave that wall up and let the water run around it. And like you may drown for a little bit. You may start drowning for a little while, but eventually you have to remember that you know how to swim. Right. And so I think that in itself was the experience as a whole. I think vulnerability was at the core of the entire thing. It was hard to make a decision to allow the guys to sleep 8 hours a night, or men and women by the time I left there, and to allow them to sleep 8 hours a night and shorten the field training exercise, because those were seen as weakness. Yeah. And I took that as a personal as people calling me weak.
Yep.
And I had to realize that, like, if I wasn't here to serve me,
Yeah.
that if that's what it took, it's what it takes. And it all worked out to our advantage as the unit. But I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. That was a very vulnerable moment for me, because I grew up. I mean, like, and people that know me from the past, like I'm like, I'm not someone that hides from,
Right.
And I don't mind friction. I actually enjoy it quite a bit. And I grew up with, I mean, the best way I say it is like a meat eater generation. Very,
Yeah.
very aggressive, very go and take it. You can sit around and complain or just do it. Um, and, uh, and, and so to be stepping away with these injuries, to have it in the back of my mind that I'm just kind of some, like, worthless dog that's been used
Yeah.
up, like, no longer useful if I'm not going to go get my bite. Um, and this is all happening in my own head. And then I turn around to, a family that's put up with me being gone. But the bottom line is I've been gone.
Right.
And then the only thing I had before was the unit, and to have people showing this thing where my image was going to start to become weak. What did I have?
Right.
And so like, it was, and all of this was happening in my own head. I had Chris Masters there, who, if anybody knows Chris, is, once again, this goes like, just like Ken Keene, they're leaders.
Yeah.
And so what gave me the confidence to do it and hold the line, it was him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is the spot where I felt the most vulnerable, in both, at my house and at
Yeah.
work, but it's where I grew the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's so for people that don't know what we're talking about here, so he was the NCOIC of CERT, Small Ranger Unit Tactics, which is the regiment's pre-Ranger course. So that you go there for 3 weeks before you go to Ranger School to prepare you to go into Ranger School, and you flipped it on its head. I think is probably the best way to put it. And it'd be, give a quick snapshot of what you did there and the number, how we changed the numbers, how they increased through Ranger School throughput through that, because it was a phenomenal thing you implemented there.
Yeah. So I think I went over there with I mean, I don't even know if I want to say their names right now, because one of them is still, a few of them are still operational, but I had, going over there, the situation was that we had a weak generation on our hands. And it's kind of something that we were stuck with, because technology had raised people to step further from the ranches. And I was just having trouble seeing that because I had I got a close buddy of mine from Pittsburgh, and he didn't grow up on ranches. He is one of the hardest people I have ever met. Most disciplined, and I wish I could say his name right now, but I can't. But I love that guy, and he is the one. He's always been there for me. But he didn't grow up on ranches and these things, and so I didn't understand this definition of, like, you're weaker here, you're not. I got buddies who were homeschooled. You got buddies you get people who, the first time they heard a cuss word was at basic training. And all of us, but they're resilient. And so it was like we were looking at the wrong variables, and that's what we did was we did flip it on its head. We changed it to be very deliberately and intentionally growing leaders. That's what we were doing. We already knew that at some point we were going to have to trust that our system, the system that people had bled for, was doing something right, and stop questioning everything else. Look at, as they say, tend your garden, and what we did is we implemented a lot of positive psychology movement, a lot of brain science. It was tough because it was the resistance came from the social side of the organization and the cultural side. But when we increased graduation by 23% in a fiscal year, it was a historic number that, so there's a couple variables that were different from back in, the 90s. We have a lot more, as you know, a lot different jobs now inside of the regiment. And so now you have mechanics, intelligence professionals, you have officer and enlisted coming to this prep course. You got it's just a wide array of these people that graduate at, a less than 5% rate from Ranger School on the outside. And we were priming the entire population, and it had to do with ownership.
Yeah.
It had to do with taking it, owning it, and increasing the graduation rate. And it was those results built us the space to then do that at the pre-RAS program for that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So for some context, like when I went to Ranger School in 2002, CERT or pre-Ranger, as you call it, was not a prep course. Mm-hmm. It was another selection.
Yeah.
You just went there and you suffered and slept as little as you could and ate as little as you could and actually showed up to Ranger School in worse shape, worse mental shape, worse physical shape than you were the 3 weeks prior. So in no way was it preparing you for the course. And Ray and his team realized that, and it's now they prepare you for the course. Yeah. Like you show up to the course better than when you got to the prep course the 3 weeks prior. So it just takes some organizational courage, some personal courage, and you got to be able to get past some of the haters and some of the the old school train of thought. We've talked about it when somebody's like, this generation and their dang cell phones and this and that. But the same person that says that then turns around and pulls a cell phone out of his pocket and is on it just the same. And we talk about it. You say it all the time. If you want to see behavior, you got to model the behavior that you want to see change. And you did it, and it was the organization is lucky to have you in there. Sometimes things just align, and you were in there at the right time. You were the right man at the right moment, and I thank you from a leader from the organization, and you did great things there. And then so transitioning into your military service. So you're coming up on 15 years. You're going through the medical board process. Yeah. It's unfortunate you're not going to get, at a minimum, to stand in front of a company with a diamond on your chest. It's unfortunate, but I know you're going to go out and do great things for yourself, and you're going to still continue to help the organization and the guys and girls in it. But what has that last 15 years inside the 75th, all in conflict, right? What is it? What would it mean to you? What are you going to take from this place? What are you going to miss about this place? This place is in the 75th.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to take is, man, I don't know. I don't even know if I know yet, because this is like a daily process where I'm still processing the fact that I'm even leaving the unit. There was a lot of my life that I frankly thought there was no, like, you can't slap the dragon that many times, and and I know it goes through a lot of guys' heads eventually, and but it's also nice that you're doing something that's so important that's okay.
Yeah.
And so which I know that's a rough statement, because I have a family and stuff, and I don't know, maybe that's selfish, but I think the biggest thing I'll take away is that and it goes back to the small unit tactics experience. It is that there are so many special people that sit in these places, and they go places, and they educate themselves, and they do things that society asks them to do, and then they go to mediocre places with mediocre cultures. And if you can prime that culture, it inspires something that sat in your organization the entire time.
Yeah. It
was sitting right there in plain sight. And when you figure out how to spark that, and that's what I feel like what I really learned and took away from all this is, taking this entitled approach to talent. As I've heard a coach say that talent is a coach's cocaine. And it distracts you, it gets you ramped up, and you're no longer looking where it really matters. And I'll tell you, that's what I'm going to take away, is that there are people all over America that believe in the country, that believe in the business they're with. They believe in economic advantage and having the ability to stand and say that we are free. We may be in friction, but we're free. And they just need to be, they just need to have the ability to actually be inspired again.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing I'm going to take away is that there's so many special people here. The small unit tactics thing, we had a population that went from worthless to, not, I shouldn't say worthless, but they're being defined and segmented and studied as this thing, and I'm just sick of that, and so that's my next fight. That is what I will do. I will continue to lead into the future, and that's what I'll take away from my time at Regiment is there were so many special people sitting right there, approximately 23% of them that were not being they were falling, not victim, but they were the victims of a misguided system.
Right.
And if you have courage, you can correct those systems with force. And it is amazing, that just like changing the flow of a river, it looks natural right after you do it.
Right.
But first you got to blow. First you got to blow the dam. You know, and so that's I think what I'll take away. From this place. Yeah. And then what was the other part of the question? Like what it means to me, or
what does it meant to you? Or I'll rephrase, like, has it settled on you, like, you're never going to put on kit again, walk onto the back of a 47 and fly to an objective and hear that 6-3-1, get on a knee, feel that tug of your safety line as you unhook and flip your nods down and run off the back of a ramp of an aircraft. I haven't fully realized it yet. I'm starting to. I wonder if you have, and what you're going to miss about that, just what that's meant to you.
Yeah, I mean, I have never, in repetition, like the story that you tell about football, that feeling of the team, and I remember lifting up and just so many that feeling, the aircraft turns, you go, you lift, and then you watch the lights go away.
Oh yeah.
And there's like this feeling that everything is right. Like everything that there you are where you belong in life. There's going to be wars for the rest of our time. It'd be great. Pray for peace, prepare for war.
Yeah.
I will find that again. I don't know what it will be in just yet. I think I know where I'm going to compete on the outside, but I don't know if that's going to give me that same feeling just yet. But yeah, I just, like you said, like that 30-second call is when you flip to a knee and you can see the heartbeat through the aircraft, and there's just nothing that could change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, walking away from that when some didn't, I think, is probably the hardest part. Understanding why I deserve to walk away. I think that's more of what I'll take into the future is like, I have Ben Kopp. The anniversary to his death is coming up here pretty soon. And, so I think that in that, we just have to remind ourselves to live in a way that would make them proud,
Exactly.
And we're going to people make mistakes.
Yeah.
You're going to make mistakes. Anybody who looks like they're not making mistakes, they are probably exhausted from trying not to show it.
That's true.
And so, and I say people because I'm including myself in that. And so I, like not doing that ever again. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm fully okay with that, honestly.
Yeah.
So like maybe I'll get involved in, I don't know, combating human trafficking.
I know.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Like or body armor is a risk mitigator. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? My problem is bearing weight and but my mind, if I can still keep it on something
Yeah.
and add value to bring that, that mindset, the hunter mindset
Yeah.
into, to play in some other mission.
Yeah. So through those deployments, through all those years while we're still in it, what was that hardest day that you had in uniform?
Yeah. Man. There's like the physically hard, like the exhausted in combat. I think the the hardest day was and this is I think this is why the transition part, why I say I feel like I've transitioned multiple times. I think it was when we landed after my last deployment, when I knew that I was
Back
going to
stateside?
selection and training. Yeah. When I got off the aircraft there, I knew that in some odd way that was my, I mean, I knew what was happening with my body. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I was in pain every day, and and people that were close to me knew about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I want to say that was the hardest day because that was the day that I had to come to terms with the life that I had created, and
Yeah.
I had to come to terms. There was no more like honeymoon between, I arrive at, come back from doing our work. You come back to the country and you're celebrating for, like 6 weeks, and you go on block leave for 2 weeks. You're happy to see everybody.
Yeah.
You got that deployment money saved up. Everything is just, glorious. And then you go and you only have a few months before you're going to go again, guaranteed, if not sooner. So why not live it up?
Yeah.
And then when that timeline is gone, I think that at that point, that's when I realized, and I've said it before, but I feel like I turned around and I looked at a life that, like a family that barely knew me really.
Yeah.
And I had just become disconnected from a lot of things. So not, and it needed to be, I needed to focus to even get to the point where we're at now. I mean, the work we do isn't easy, but I think that was the hardest day for me. Yeah.
I think it's interesting when I ask that question of everybody, the answer is always not something I expect. I don't think it's going to be something the listeners expect. And for you, like for me, it's similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's Matt was killed, Lance was killed, the 70 some odd others. That was terrible, but I always felt like I could go back and honor them and serve them and avenge them, for being blunt. And then when I knew that was gone, that's what it really kind of hit me. Same as you. It's rough, and I wasn't able to avoid some of the things I'd been avoiding for all the years.
Absolutely.
Being a husband and a father. Not that I was avoiding it, but I was a victim of the circumstance, and I perpetuated it by staying in it my whole life. It's those things that we wrestle with that we don't usually talk about, and we deal with it on our own. And thanks for sharing that, Ray. And then, so you're going through the med board process, transition process. Any lessons learned you would give anybody in that process right now that you've learned as you're moving out?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't. I'd have to give it with kind of I haven't transitioned yet, so like I'm not out yet. What I've learned so far is that there are people out there that want to help us.
Yeah.
You need to understand yourself first, period. The Honor Foundation, I think, was foundational for me in that. I had been through Design Your Life drills with Emory, out there as well. And a lot of, we all been through personality assessments. But it was like, going back, breaking down the stories with the Honor Foundation, being amongst a community that continuously engages in that conversation. People want to help, but you need to be able to even articulate yourself to know how they can help you. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm taking away. I've gone through the Army's Transition Assistance Program already. And and frankly, their Department of labor work is pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's pretty close to what the Honor Foundation is teaching on how to target specifically on the job that you want to get, and even visualize where you want to be and how it could happen. So there's people out there. You just have to be ready to transition.
Yeah.
And so, if you think you're going to go put on kit again, or if you plan on just going and getting out and putting kit on again, I wouldn't call that ready to transition.
No.
I have a lot of buddies, and I know you do too, that transition out, put another kit on, and they finally come to terms with they wanted more money.
Yeah.
And money is a resource. People, it's okay to go out there. You don't need to apologize for wanting, a lifestyle or something. You don't need to apologize to anybody. It's what America is about. Go out and get it.
Yeah.
But they do it, and they realize that the only part that makes wearing the kit bearable is the mission. It's the purpose. It's the people, and
absolutely.
And money doesn't hold that.
Nope.
It doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. And then so you're close. What's next for Raye? What's the future hold for you?
Yeah, I think the future is one going to hold some level of entrepreneurship, and at some level with the goal. This is no secret. I was very fortunate that I was the Poets and Quants voted Poets and Quants best and brightest out of the executive MBA program at Emory. And in that, I said very clearly, and I mean what I said, is that I will eventually have some level of a human development consulting firm. And I don't know the road to get there, but just like everything else, like I know I can figure it out, and it's going to happen. And then outside of that, sales are probably the spot where that interests me the most, because it's an eat what you kill environment.
Yeah.
And I love the concept of synthesizing someone's story into a very applicable solution, and bringing those things together and actually helping people get somewhere they weren't before. And so the sales piece of that, if I could do anything, I think where someone could get the most value out of me immediately would be in some level of leader and development with authority to set the culture.
Yeah.
Period. I have no problem holding the line on culture. And I think that's an advantage of ours. That's what you learn to do, and as a successful enlisted individual out of the military, and more so, once again, taking it from the regiment, that's who defends the culture if it's going to exist, And so others will help, but the consistent basis of it in the regiment, it comes from the enlisted corps, no different than the SEAL platoons, all the same.
I think I think we discussed it before, the sales aspect, and a lot of the transitioning 75th guys and girls that I talk to, that sales, they're turned off by sales because they don't understand sales. I think you have a unique perspective on like how we enlisted, we've been selling ourselves our whole career, and just speak about where do you think we fit into the sales pipeline in the next phase of somebody's life?
Yeah,
what sales really means.
Yeah. I think sales means you're closest to the customer and closest to the friction, which means that if you have the ability to appreciate complexities, and I think that we do, we are consistently forced. We can't use policy. We don't write policy.
Right.
Which I believe, this is how I take it, is that we can never come under the false assumption that I sign a document and this is the way things are going to go. The Army we sign policies all the time. I don't want to talk about the Army, but people sign policies all the time, and I see CNN and these TV channels updating things where we're still having issues. So the policy isn't what does it. What does it is when you prime leaders, you put them at the point of friction, And no, I would go back and I would say you teach leaders how to move to the point of friction, the point of discomfort, the spot where you're not sure, and figure it out. That's sales. It is to me, and I've had the advantage where I've had a couple of friends let me do some part-time, like looks at companies and get involved in like a sales pitch and I think that we are we have the unique ability to remain aware of the needs of the customer, and then understand the capabilities inside of your team, and then meld those two things together. I mean, that is exactly, you walk into a planning, any planning bay in Afghanistan or Iraq, and you're walking in, you may be meeting a new commander or someone who there's 4 operations happening around the country at the time or something, and you have to quickly be able to help him, listen, above all, listen and hear his needs, because they could have nothing to do with, landing on the X, or whatever you're doing, and it could have nothing to do with that, so listen, and then intricately understand the capabilities of your team in a way and synthesize them in a way that satisfy them, and then you allow the rest, your character, to come across and actually get this thing across the line. Do that over and over and over again. You build a reputation for it, and you know what I mean. Like when you become that guy, you're that guy, and I think that's what sales is.
Yeah, I don't think I know. Specifically our organization, because that's the only place I've been in the Army, but from the moment you put stripes on your chest, you're selling yourself or your team, right? You're selling it to your squad leader, and then when you're a squad leader, you're selling to your platoon sergeant, your platoon sergeant selling to your PL. And once you get to that level, you're starting to sell to somebody who doesn't know as much as you do. You have to sell your concepts. You have the experience, you have the knowledge, but you have to sell it to somebody who's less experienced to you as to why you should do it that way. And you continue to do that throughout your career. And if you just reframe it and lifelong learning, I know a lot of people from this organization go out and probably absolutely destroy in the sales world, as long as they can get away from some of the stigma and all that stuff. So, Ray, really appreciate you coming on today. Amazing conversation. I look forward to following you and watching what you're going to do in the future. I'm not alone in that. The whole organization is looking forward to it. But your family deserves to have some time with you, and you deserve it. And again, just thank you. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for coming on. And for everybody out there watching, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave your comments. And if you want to link in with Ray or something, hit him up on LinkedIn. Or if you have transition questions or MEB questions, I know Ray will help you out if you need it. But again, appreciate it. And until next time, we'll do this again.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Yuma. Thank you.